In India, I do not think they are related to Europe because when you look closer to the stones, you can see metal tools marks. And also, many of those walls they make up these complex structures that were made in the 1500s or the 1400s at most. What the video explores is that these are not the oldest stoneworks in India. Number one, what is Cyclopean masonry? Or technically, it's called polygonal masonry. It's when a person decides to build a wall or a structure instead of using regular sized stone blocks, he uses very irregular sized stone blocks and fit them one to another like a puzzle. Doing that has some benefits. It's better resistant to water, better resistant to earthquakes, it's much prettier, but it has enough disadvantages. It's way more costly and time consuming to make, and in some cases, it's really impossible to make.
All right, back for his second trip into the multiverse. I'm excited to be joined by Henrique Agostinho, the creator of the YouTube channel One-Eyed Giant Building Walls, which is one of my favorite channels on YouTube. He's almost at 6K subscribers. So if you're watching this, go ahead and give him a subscribe if you like what you see. He combines humor and personality and his own personality with breathtaking videos exploring ancient Cyclopean sites all around the world. I think of him as sort of a collector and a categorizer of these sites. And it's really a fun channel to watch and a fun channel to subscribe to. So go ahead and check that out. Enrique, thank you so much for joining the show, man. Again.
My pleasure.
Awesome. And joined by me, or joining us today is Jason Huffman, shaman known as Shaman 711 of the Shaman and the Philosopher podcast and the Institute for Natural Philosophy, to check out some of these sites that Rick's going to show us from Japan and India. And we're just going to talk about Cyclopean walls in general and what are they and where can you find them. So thanks for joining, Jason.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, Dave. And Enrique, good to see you again, man. I have
Yes.
interviewed Enrique once before. You're good friends with Ricardo. And Dave, you mentioned beforehand, not only does Enrique stand out for his research, right, his independent research and all that he's putting forth in Willis today, but his personality, guys, his sense of
Yeah,
humor.
it's my favorite.
He does not hide, and he displays well, even down to his posts on social media. So all of that stands out to me about Enrique, and folks really should check out his work. Is that not only is he putting the work out, but he's putting his personality into it, and that's what not only a researcher but a creative, is what we hope to see. So thank you, Enrique. I'm glad to be here today.
My pleasure.
So, on that note, even the name of your channel is a little bit of an entendre, for lack of a better word. Tell us about the name One-Eyed Giant Building Wall.
I have a fascination for Cyclopean and polygonal walls for a really long time. And I've been just like collecting information and doing stuff. And one day I was convinced by my son that was fed up with going with me and listening to me talking about the subject to do something on YouTube about the stuff in order to find other people to talk to. And when I started doing the videos, I realized that I should have like a character on the videos that would be a better version of myself. And since me personally, I am a little dick, I thought I could be a one-eyed giant.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna flash this quick. His logo's hilarious. One-eyed giant building wall there. And so even just from the get-go, you know, it's funny stuff, and you find little funny tidbits he throws into every video, which I really appreciate. So
Well, they're definitely dad jokes. I'm glad you pointed out your son, because the whole Cyclopes from Cyclopean wall, that's one of those deadpan jokes that I'm using all the time. And yeah, it's right off the bat. That's
Yeah.
great, dude.
So, Henrique, you mentioned that you've been thinking about this and researching this for a long time before you started the channel. What was your first introduction into Cyclopean walls and Cyclopean builders? And you know, was it a YouTube video? Did you visit a site? What happened?
Okay, so it started. The day I got really hooked on it was when I read The Fingerprints of the Gods by
Oh,
Graham
got that
Hancock.
back there.
Yeah, that was the thing that started to that shake my all my understanding of the world. I had been to Cusco, to Machu Picchu. I had seen the whole thing. I'm a civil engineer by formation, so I have a
Okay.
degree on civil engineer, but I never
Got it.
worked in construction. But I have the minimal understanding of what requires to build stuff. And I went there, I looked at it and said, oh, this is impossible. This is incredible. But everyone around me said, oh, there's nothing to look at. Don't worry. This is easy to do. Anyone can just pull out 10-ton stones and rub them perfectly so that they can fit one to another. Move along, move along. And I was just like anybody else. I was just like there for the tourism and the views and Instagram opportunities. So really not paying a lot of attention. Then 2 years afterwards, I went to Easter Island. Again, the same thing. Oh, really nice, big head statues and stuff. This is really a cool place to visit. Very special. Okay, I like it here. It's super cool. Very far away.
It is cool.
It is an amazing site all over. So I'm going around with everyone, and they're telling me the local guides, everything. They're telling me the stories that they tell everyone. So the basic, no mystery here. Don't think about stuff. Just believe what you're being told. There's nothing special going on here. And one day I went to a run, and out of the path, I found a Napu, which is a platform made in polygonal style that looks a lot like it was made by the Peruvian guys. So it looks a lot like it's made in Peru, but it's in Easter Island. And I was like, okay, I cannot believe my eyes. This is the same thing as I've seen 2 years ago in Peru. There's have to be something. So I took some pictures with my phone and went back online trying to find information about it. Could not find a lot because these were 15 years ago or so. And maybe a bit less, but whatever. It was in the dark ages. And then I asked the guide again, what is that? And he said, oh, there's nothing, that no one cares about it. The place is not even open for tourism. And I went back home and start digging for more information. That's where I found the book from Graham Hancock and read it. And I was just like mind blown. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything he says. I don't think I agree with anything he says. What I do agree with is there's something to be discovered. And this is about trying to figure out our past, our history. And the amount of unknown is so huge that we have to be open to all possibilities, because all possibilities are possible. And we are being misled by anyone that says that knows exactly what happened. So going back to Cusco and Easter Island, there are several hypotheses that could work. One is aliens came in and they did that thing. That's one possibility.
That's what I'm going with.
Yeah. The second one is there's nothing to see there. This is very easy to do. And each culture on its own decided to do it this way and abandon it. Okay, this is the mainstream version. There's a lot of things in between, like people traveled from Peru to Easter Island and replicated what they saw somewhere else. That's an alternative also. And when we look at stuff, we have to consider which one is the more likely, which one that does fit better with my understanding of the past. Because the facts that we have, they go well with any explanations we want. There is as many proofs for aliens as there is for the mainstream version. They don't have any special power to reveal, they don't know the truth. They are making educated guesses and assumptions that they should be at least a bit honest, saying, we have these facts. It looks to me that this might have happened, and people are free to have different ideas.
Imagine that.
Yeah, but they don't do it. And that's where I fell on the rabbit hole completely, because I kept finding more and more stuff that says that doesn't fit. And I kept finding more and more people being totally arrogant and certain about what they were talking about, and not even willing to be listening to different ideas, or to and then comes the reason why I started the channel, which is it's not exactly about finding the explanation, is about the trip, about the discovery, about finding the little pieces and making a puzzle and understanding our view of the world and our past, and now what makes us human and our understanding of everything. If one is just going through life being told what to believe, yeah, that's doesn't sound fun.
No, not at all. Go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to say, I like Enrique, that in the manner in which, you mentioned the work of Graham Hancock, because I found myself sort of much like you, it served as a proper mind opener, right? And I think what it was, again, as you said, agree or disagree with sort of the premises, but what it was seeing someone who did lack this arrogance and this sort of know it all mentality that I, like you or any of us, bumped up into in the normal mainstream narrative producing academic world, right?
Hmm.
And that's what to me is why I was able to take that work on and take, if not its answers, its possibilities, kind of
Exactly.
as you did, on board.
Hmm.
Because I was getting it from a man who was not only saying what I thought, like we should question all this, but also was presenting it without this arrogance,
Hmm.
with this the way he presented it opened my mind, as you said, to whether it was what he was saying or what I knew had to be there now that I'd accepted, this
Hmm.
open
Yeah.
mind approach to independent research.
Yeah.
Very good point.
So
Yeah.
and it drives me to find connections about what does it mean, about what the implications for us. So, like two small examples. One of them is about the video that will be premiering soon enough, is showing how the technology to build really difficult public works as large aqueducts, it predates the establishment of empires. So there's this big aqueduct, which is an amazing site that was made by arguably the Romans. Why was it made by the Romans? Because beforehand, the site had no big ruler. It was a mesh of independent places and pirates. It was called by the Romans themselves the coast of pirates. So, if one decides the thing was built by the Romans, it fits with one idea, which is there comes this central planner, this emperor, this legion of bureaucrats and an army, and they can build stuff. Other way around is okay, if it's older, if the aqueduct was built before the Romans, then it means that a small village with pirates and fishermen can build great stuff without the pressure of this whole bureaucratic apparatus. And that is a huge difference on the understanding, not only of history, but society as a whole. So, other examples that go exactly like this. We are told the pharaohs built the pyramids, and not only they built the pyramids, but they built the Nile irrigation channels. That it was the Nile irrigation channels that the pharaohs built that allowed for Egypt to be very rich, and so they be able to build those magnificent buildings and temples and stuff. The problem is that the channels, the Nile irrigation that allows for all that food to be produced predates the dynastic Egypt for hundreds, thousands of years. I'm not talking about the pyramids alone being quite a wacky construction that we don't know exactly when it was done, and we have a lot of reasons to suspect their origin. This is proven fact and accepted by the mainstream, okay? The canals that allowed the irrigation are much, much, much older than the setting up of the imperial rule of Egypt, of the pharaohs. We can do the same in summer, in the Mesopotamia, in nowadays Iraq. All those civilizations as Babylonia, Ur, and all those big cities with big guys, and Gilgamesh, and all those kings, they are later than the irrigation channels. In summary, first come the builders, then comes the rulers. And if we look at history and society this way, we start wondering, why are we being pushed this idea that it was the pharaoh that built the canal, it was the Romans that built the aqueduct? Why? What's the point? Because we have plenty of evidence showing it's the other way around. People start to build stuff, and then comes a big government. Like the history of the America, of the USA, is exactly that way. So
Right,
a lot
that's
of
true.
I was about to
crazy
say that
people
the Native
go
Americans, man.
exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of crazy people go to North America. They do a lot of mistakes, but they create a huge country, very, very rich. That country is so rich that the Brits decide, oh, I should take some taxes out of it. And then you have a revolution, and you start this experiment on self-government, which is all cool and nice, but the wealth was there before. The first thing that arrived on the US were the people to do the plantations and the roads and all the infrastructure that allowed for the government to collect. So the Tea Party was a result of a tax on tea, and the events came with a lot of guys dressed up as Indians. They went into a boat and threw away the tea that was on the boat to the water. That that this thing way better than I do.
Right.
Funny part.
Maybe.
The boat was already there. The seaport was already there. The trade was already there. It was the tax that was a new thing. We are told history all backwards. They say it starts with the government, with a tax. But no, the tax is the last event. The government is the last part of it. When they decided to create the tax and to mess up with the Americans' big mistake, the people in Boston, they had already made a seaport. They had boats, they had plantations, they had somehow carried the tea from God knows where into the seaport. All that infrastructure was not made by the government, was made by the people. So that's one of the things that I find really exciting, to go and look at the stones and start wondering, what do they mean?
Yeah, looking at them from that perspective definitely changes things. That the building came before the government or before the infrastructure has huge implications for our story, our human story, right? And you just went back a couple hundred years to the United States and proved your point, which is you know I, I think helpful when we're thinking about this stuff. So most of
It's
your
important
work,
to state before you move on. Just don't close the window here and move on with this, Enrique. It goes back when you were painting the picture of the aqueducts and all of the cultures that came before. Just because of the area of my work, right? My mind's on Native Americans, and as you're talking about the pharaohs, I'm seeing Cahokia, which is a mound with a footprint bigger than that of the pyramids. And I'm told that happened at first. They said 30 days, and now science has slowly pushed that date back. But again, it goes to your point of we're told this narrative. Look, they were irrigating. Native Americans controlled entire landscapes. They knew how aquascapes work. They controlled what we call now grasslands and plains, right? Because to
Mhm.
keep the food migrating. So the idea that these advancements, as you say, are necessary to have a system or a structure that we would recognize as such in place is a fallacy. And
Mhm.
my work certainly in looking for, man, the roads, dude. When the Spanish chroniclers, and the Portuguese first came through here in the 1400s, what the infrastructure that was here was not what we are told, right? So even these first
Mhm.
Americans, as you point out, those originally they landed here and they had roads, they had clearings,
Exactly.
they had fields of corn that they were then
Mhm.
able to just sort of transplant
Exactly.
into. Great point, man.
Yeah. And it's very fashionable these days to find out that in the middle of the Amazon there was once a lot of cities, which is true. And those cities, they built the Amazon, so they made up this terra preta, which is a very difficult combination of charcoal and a lot of other stuff to
right?
make soil to build a forest. We, with our all technology, we have a lot of trouble keeping the soils alive. And those guys back then, they made the most incredible jungle in the world.
Yes.
They engineered it. They had a
Yes.
king? No,
It's
they
so
did not
crazy.
have a king. And since they did not have a king, their accomplishments are not being talked about.
Right. It's because when you get a king, Dave, they let Monsanto put poison in all of our soil. It's not that we can't create one, it's that those
Mhm.
in control have an opposite agenda at the
Exactly,
moment.
exactly. That's the whole thing. And then when you start taking a book of history, always liked history as growing up. But then at a point in time, I decided, now I'm not going to follow up on this because this is too stiff. I want to do something else. And but growing up in school as a kid, reading history in the history books, it's all about who's the king, who's the battle, and
Hmm.
who fights who. And it's never about who were the people that were doing stuff. It's like, okay, then comes this emperor, and the emperor has a army of 5,000 people and he kills everybody else. So who are the people doing the killing? Why are they doing the killing? It's because of the emperor? No, of course not. They betray him the next day. Goes for
Right.
another example, which is something that has been brewing in my mind for a really long time. I will do a video about this if I can one day in the future, which is okay. So, right now that we are talking, let me just uh, I do my videos in a sort of in a way more concrete stuff. So I show the stones, I show the walls, I tell their story, I show them details, I try to make some jokes, and I give a little bit of hint about the way I see the world on it. Now that I'm talking, I'm just talking about the way I see the world or what's behind the walls for me. So if one
Right.
goes to the videos and say, what's about all that thing of the constructions and the rulers and whatever, it's not in the video itself. It's just like underlying. Moving on. The fall of Rome, there's like this massive, brilliant book written in the 1800s by Edward Gibbons that describes the fall of Rome from Caesar into the Byzantine Empire. And when I read the book, I found strange that it talks about the fall of Rome starting with Caesar, Julius Caesar. And I said, no, that's not the fall of Rome. The fall of Rome is 400 years afterwards. And Gibbon is not talking about the fall of Rome 400 years after. He starts with Caesar getting into power. And then we have, in the second century, the 5 good emperors, Adrian, Marcus Aurelius, and Trajan, and whatever. Those 5 good emperors are considered to be the best rulers ever, especially the final one, the philosopher king Marcus Aurelius. We have seen the movie, The Gladiator, great movie. Yeah. And you see what happens. You have like Marcus Aurelius, the great emperor, and then after we have his son Commodus, which is a total asshole and destroys the empire. And my question was, how can the empire crumble from one good king to one bad king in 10 years? How can it be? How can it be to the total height of its power, its wealth, its proper management? He was being ruled by 5 best emperors ever. And then come this little guy, Commodus, and in 10 years, he destroys everything. So those guys had 120 years of the very best ruling possible. And this one prick destroys everything? How can it be? So there's only one explanation for me, which is either the system is so fragile that if the ruler makes a small mistake, it all goes kaboom, or the rulers are not important at all, and the empire was in decline during the whole period since Caesar. The whole thing was in decline, and they were not paying attention. And they keep living on their wealth and their power and their extravagant means. And the final emperor would go around saying, oh, look at me, I'm a philosopher. I'm very smart. I control the whole continent. I'm a really good person. But the system is totally rotten. It's destroyed by them.
Yeah, it takes a long time for a civilization to collapse. It's not just one guy, right? And that's a very good point. It makes me think
I was going even a bit further than that, which is saying that the last guy that we are taught to think that the guy that is doing the right thing, he is the main agent of the collapse. Take the French Revolution. French Revolution happened in 1789. It was a mess. People were killing each other. It was a really crumbling disaster. Just 25 years before, we have King Soleil, the greatest king of France, the wealthiest king of Europe, Louis XIV. So that guy was just building Versailles. He was doing so well, and within a couple of decades, the whole thing goes bust into chaos. Again, was he really that good? No, obviously he was just extorting an immense amount of wealth for himself that degraded the society and turned it into a collapse. So that's the whole thing that I'll try to put in a video with some pretty pictures of stones.
The saying, Dave, you probably know it. I don't know if you have a version over there, Henrique, but locks on a door, like on your house or whatever. We have a saying, and it's that a lock simply keeps an honest man honest. right? Meaning that it's not much. Look at a lock on a door. That's not much. You know, if my
Mhm.
desire is to get through there, that doesn't really do anything, right? But if my desire is not to get through there, if I lock it, great. I'm going to see. I'm not going to go. But what if I'm the guy that didn't want to go in there and it's not locked, right? I'm probably gonna like peek in there anyway. Kind of go, let me see what I'm not gonna go into, right?
Mhm.
So when you describe this, how or why does it fall from one to the other? That to me is what pops in my head because I think we're looking at more about human nature, perhaps, right?
Right.
And what
Mhm.
was going on, when you get this guy up at the top that says, whoa, I've got it all handled, what is that telling us about the general population and what they're doing in response? I like
Yeah.
it. I do look forward to a video on it. This is
Yeah,
good.
one day I'll get there. It's like 3 or 4 videos down the road, and I haven't got a proper site to show and tell the story of how it goes. I just have
See,
this crazy idea of how civilizations fall. Because another thing that I've been pushing on the videos is this idea that the builders of Cyclopean walls, they were a culture.
Right.
Uh, it's not just a coincidence. It's something that a lot of people decided to make in cooperation, and for them to make that is a culture. um, Now, is it just one culture across the world? So far I'm not convinced. My inclination is it's not one culture across the world, but it's also not all separated. So I'd say Easter Island is totally related to Peru. They are the same people. They influence each other. They talk to one another. They share the experience. They share the know-how and the reasons to devote the time and energy to do that thing. Um, is Japan involved? I don't know, but I think there's like this Pacific Rim thing that goes around. People were crossing from one side of the Pacific to the other. And the reason why we have some type of constructions in Japan and in South America is because at a point in time, people were talking.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't mean that they were bringing about all the workers and all the people and they are the same. These are not like a traveling band of builders. What I'm saying is that they had a lot of contact and influence to one another. And someone saw how it was being done the other place and decided to implement some of the ideas on the other side of it. And this has been a constant throughout the whole history of man.
Yeah, and we're going to take a look at the aqueduct you mentioned earlier, as well as Japan, and as well as some stuff in India. But before we do, I was wondering if you could define what you consider to be a Cyclopean wall. And I also, in your recent video about Japan, you said that Cyclopean masonry was invented and then forgotten up to 20 times, is sort of the mainstream theory. Can you talk about that as well?
Yeah. So, number one, what is Cyclopean masonry? Or technically, it's called polygonal masonry. It's when a person decides to build a wall or a structure instead of using regular sized stone blocks, he uses very irregular sized stone blocks and fit them one to another like a puzzle.
What if history isn't linear? What if civilizations rise and fall again and again? Discover the shocking truth in Deja Vu, Has Everything Already Been? By my friend Alexander Cheshkovich. Grab your copy now on Amazon. The link is in the description below. And subscribe to Dave's Multiverse on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble today so you don't miss a thing.
Doing that has some benefits. It's better resistant to water, better resistant to earthquakes. It's much prettier. but it has enough disadvantages. It's way more costly and time consuming to make. And in some cases, it's really impossible to make. We have no idea how to achieve it. In 99% of the cases, you can look at it and say, okay, I could do that. It's a lot of work, but one person can do it. So everything that is in Japan is very much on this 99% category, which is okay, it's beautiful, it's nice, it's a lot of work, but it can be done. Only some stuff that is to be found in Peru or in Turkey are really mind-boggling, saying, how the hell did they do it? It's impossible. But beyond the how, the why is what tells that it is a culture, because at a point in time, people decided, well, let's do it this way. Let's go all together, take a whole village and build this stuff and spend our time doing this mega wall. Why would a lot of people cooperate into this effort when there were way easier ways of building stuff? It's a big question, and the only answer is that that's what defined their culture. A culture is the way we agree as a group with certain ideas that otherwise we have no reason to agree. So we're talking English, which is a quintessential description of a culture. A language is what makes a culture being a culture, is the biggest example what is a culture. For me to talk this way and for you to understand, it means that we share this understanding that the random amount of sounds that I'm making here have a meaning. And we have to agree to that meaning in a way that we can communicate. That is the definition of a culture. If we were from a different culture, we would be using a different random sort of sounds. And there's the most famous Portuguese poet, I'm Portuguese, so that's why I know this, has this line that I think is wonderful, which is my homeland is the Portuguese language. And it said, we are defined by it. That's what means being from a culture, is knowing those secret codes of sounds as a language. Below that, we have religion. Why religion? Because religion, it's only important if we are in communion with God, with the supernatural. We have to believe. If we all go together to a church, that's something that we share, and it's totally irrational, totally personal, totally flexible. So I'm from one religion, you are from another religion, so that's why we are different cultures. And if we have the same religion and we share this set of beliefs, then we are the same culture. And the third one is architecture or construction. If we together decide to spend a buttload of money and time to build a stadium, we share something in common, or a church, or a wall. It doesn't matter what we build. We share the understanding that our time needs to be devoted to building this thing. Curiously enough, the mainstream defines a culture on two things. Number one, pottery. Pottery means nothing. I can do a pot
Carbon
in my
datable,
basement.
man. Carbon datable.
Yeah. I can do pottery in my basement. If I do pottery on my basement, I'm not sharing it with anyone. It could be my own invention on my own. There's nothing communal with pottery. At most, you will find it pretty and can take it, but that does not mean that we share anything. I made a pot. That's it. The second thing they use as examples for culture is weapons, which is way stranger because weapons is the first thing that people adopt when they're fighting. So unless it's a very type of weapon that requires years of training, like the long bows from the Englishman or the horseback riding arrows from the steppe warriors from the Mongols, that require a whole life dedicated to it. If it's just a hammer, that's not culture. If the hammer is there, the next guy will copy it. We've seen this happen in all wars, in all weapons. So let's go to the war of the moment, which is Ukraine. They're using drones made with Chinese technology, both
Mm-hmm.
sides. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
are they a culture because they're sharing drones? Drones that did not exist in a couple of months ago, that they're inventing on the spot their usage and the drone and the counter drone. But academics, they look at the pottery shard and say, this curved pottery is a culture. And if I ever find a curved pottery on the other side of the continent, I will say this is the same culture. But if I find the same wall that took thousands of people to make, then it's not a culture. I'm pretty sure that all the people that were building Cyclopean or polygonal walls in Europe, that they all did it in a period from more or less 2500 BC to more or less 500 BC. The details are debatable. These people that lived from Portugal to Armenia or Georgia, all in the south coast of Europe, across to the Mediterranean, these people, they were a culture. They shared the understanding that building these things was important to them. They also shared a lot of stuff related to cultures, as in language, and there's signs of the language they talked, and more importantly, their religion, the way they treated their dead. The way the Cyclopean builders in Europe treated their dead is kind of gross, it's super enticing, which is they play with their bones. We would think it's disgusting, but that's what they do. They did. They took on dead grandpa. They put him on a temporary spot. They allow maggots and other stuff to eat away the flesh. Then they cleanse the bones, and they would put the bones in a special place for reverberation of the cleansed bones. This is called excarnation, and it was the preferred death ritual for all of Europe in the Neolithic. So all the people that we know were building dolmens and were building like Stonehenge and stuff like that, they were into excarnation.
Wow.
And it's about 3,000 years BC, or 4, because this is a really long process. Someone comes into Europe and replaces this ritual with another ritual, which is cremation. And slowly, cremation becomes the dominant part of death ritual. Since we're talking about the whole continent, thousands of years, there's huge detail and huge mingling and coming back and forth. Nothing is straightforward. But if a person is honoring their dead by cleansing the bones and putting them on a little place, and another one next to him is burning the dead body in a funerary pyre, they are not the same culture. They have fundamentally different ways of looking at life and death.
Yeah, I think I really like it's important to consider. I mean, you're basically talking about anthropology here, but you're putting that together with how you're looking at the sites and considering the culture and the people who built it versus how, and because then you can get to the why once you understand the people, right?
Yeah.
And so the other thing that I had asked you about was we remembered and forgot 20 different times how to build Cyclopean walls. You
Yeah,
don't
I
believe
forgot
that
that
to be
question.
true?
No, I think that the people in Europe, they talked about it and they shared the ideas, and the ideas were traveling back and forth, and some local adaptations were made, some local skills were developed to make it in a specific way, to make it look better this way or the other way. But in most sites, we do have a jumble of techniques in most places. So Portugal has some Cyclopean walls, and we have Cyclopean walls of different techniques. They may be from different steps, different eras, different ages. They may be from slightly different technicians. So one guy does this way, and his family or his tribe does this way, and the other tribe does the other way. Whatever it is, they would living side by side, but they decided that they needed to build with odd shaped stones for whatever reason. Then they went to the other side of the Mediterranean, to Greece, Italy, and moving forward. And also there were people building this type of construction. Why? We don't know why, but to assume these two extremes and everyone in the middle just decided to start building in this crazy fashion without ever talking seems bizarre to me. The most likely explanation I can think of is someone did something quite small, quite basic, and went around saying, "You know what you are doing in my hometown is we're doing this. Oh, that's cool. We should try it."
You're making too much sense. Yeah, and to forget and then like rediscover like over 20 times doesn't
20 times in a very
doesn't seem to add up.
narrow period of time, which is like 2000 years, and in all across the Mediterranean Sea. That has to be, it cannot be. They have to talk, they have to share the experience. Now, big question. Were they going into the Americas with this idea? I don't think so, but they tried. There's a place in Mexico called the Shimalata Pyramid. It's in South Central Mexico. That is made in somewhat polygonal masonry, not with the odd shaped blocks, but without mortar, and it's big blocks fitted together. And it makes a platform just like the ones we have in Europe. This is the oldest building ever made in Mexico or Central America. It's older than everything else we have ever found. The first time the Central Americans decide to build whatever in stone, they build this. Then they move on. 3,000 years elapsed, and they have all the crazy stuff that we know, everybody knows of, like the Aztecs and the Maya and the Olmecs and all the stuff they make, which is really awesome. All the things made by the Maya and the Aztecs use mortar. They are all made with smaller stones glued together with limestone mortar. The only construction that does not have mortar is their first construction. And why? What was going on? Some people start to wonder if mortar is like a later development. So to say, okay, the first time you decide to build something, you don't have mortar, you don't have cement. So all the old buildings were using mortar. The first buildings, Göbekli Tepe, the Indus Valley civilization, all the ancient Chinese constructions, everybody was using mortar. Why? Because mortar is really easy to do. If you have a fireplace and you put some stones around it, you'll get mortar in the end, that little ash with the stone.
Mm-hmm.
If you put water again, it's sticky. And or otherwise, if you go to the bank of a river and you took up some mud, and you can use the mud to solidify, and once it dries, it's together. Or you can go and put some cow dung and shove the cow dung against the stones, and with some I don't know the word in English, with some vegetables, and
Mm-hmm.
it also sticks. So since 50, 100,000 years ago, all the construction was using mortar, several ways of it. Then we get to a point about 3,000 years ago in Europe when they decided, nah, I'm fed up with it. I'll stop using it. I'll start doing something else. Instead of using this mortar that I have totally controlled 50,000 years, I will instead do some crazy puzzle of odd-shaped stones and build something massive. Why? I don't know why. Because it's something that we go through. It's a phase. You know, when the mainstream tells about these coincidences, so we're always being shown like stuff like, you know, the design of the man with two lions, the Lord of Animals, that shows everywhere, or the people with the fish skins, or the handbags. These images, they show up across the world in every different society and epochs and stuff, or the nubs, like those nubs there, they show
Right.
up. And we have two options to consider how they got there. Number one, which is my view, is that people go and talk. You know? If a person is living in Australia, it means that he got there. And if he got there, the Aborigines, maybe some of them came back and talked, because, you know, we are told history as people went to somewhere else and they never returned. It's a one-way trip forever. People go out of Africa, cover the whole continent, and never, ever, ever, ever came back and talked about it. Which is obviously not true. People would be coming back and forth all the time. Since they've done it once, they recurrently do it. And when they go, they talk about simple stuff like, why don't you leave some nubs on your stonework? It's good luck. Or, you know, just draw a guy with fish skin, because this is like something the gods will do and it looks really cool. Imagine if we had scales on our bodies. Yeah, that would be awesome. Why is this second alternative less likely than the first alternative, than the alternative provided by the academia, which is, no, this is stuff that happens. People just one moment in time decide that they have to have fish scales in their bodies. If one take the mainstream idea a bit step further, it shows premeditation or predetermination of destiny. What it shows is that if everything is a coincidence, if people don't talk, if ideas don't circulate around the globe, the reason that some patterns are repeating is because it's entrained in our DNA. In our DNA, it says that at a point in time, we have to have a fascination with the fish scale suits. And in our DNA, it will say that at one point in time, we'll start building with polygonal walls, because it has to be. We don't need anyone to talk about this. We don't need anyone to come and explain the idea. We just do it because it's in our genes. You see, You see the two situations? So
Yeah.
my idea, people go around and talk, and some ideas stick, others don't. And whatever idea sticks becomes popular. It likes TikTok today. The other idea is that no, these things are embedded in the human experience, and the human experience follows a determined path where these steps are mandatory. That's why every society across the world goes through these steps.
Hmm. You're making too much sense. Yeah, you're making too much sense. What I think about when it comes to this is how we end up making these mistakes. How we like how do we end up like looking at these sites through the wrong lens? Do you think it's like a fault of academia? Do you think it's just human nature? What do you think?
I think it's the power grabbing opportunism
Yeah.
in governments or in power in the elites. Let's call it this way. So there's a guy that has a position, and his position as is a scribe, and his position is writing stuff on the wall praising the king that pays him.
Hmm.
So the guy does that all his life, and obviously the things he writes are praising his king because number one, he's getting paid, and number two, be killed. If this pattern repeats even today. Today in universities, we have people that have research grants, and they are PhD students, and they have to do these papers. And these papers need to quote his grant supervisor and say he's a really smart guy. And it's the same thing. It's the same mentality, the same process. It only exists because there's one guy with money paying another guy to write stuff that make him look good.
That embeds in everything.
And
In
yeah,
everything, you're right, dude. Ricardo and I have been noticing. We've been reading the De Soto Chronicles, right? And that's Portuguese and Spanish authors from the 1500s. And what's unmistakable is in their narrative. You know, they might have just a little bit on the native, bit of the battle. They did this,
mhm,
they did that, and then he'll have 5 pages breaking down by name and in paragraph form each lord and what they did. And as I'm complaining about it, Ricardo points out, he's like, man, remember who's paying this writer, right? You got to remember back
yeah,
then it was the
Hmm.
king, and so you've got to write and make your warriors sound great, even if they are committing genocide. And so
mhm,
that color, that it's a great point you bring up, Enrique, that just,
yeah,
when you look back at history, you have to see that.
Also, it's the
yeah,
idea. Somebody said this to me yesterday, and it's not the first time I've heard it, but science, but in this case, archaeology, anthropology, that kind of thing, advances one funeral at a time.
mhm,
And it's the idea that we have these institutions, like you mentioned, that are one guy's whose ideas are at the top of, and everyone
mhm,
else has to, in order to get your degree, you have to write about what this guy's ideas are, and you've got to agree
mhm,
with him for the most part. And then you get that degree, and whether you end up like but drinking the Kool-Aid or not. And some people drink the Kool-Aid and they have a whole career about it. But the problem is this institution is built on this structure that where you can't. There's the advancement takes
you
50
have to
years.
agree.
Yeah, you have to agree.
So yeah, it's a
Or
Ponzi
somebody
scheme.
dies and then somebody else is in charge and they've got a different
Yeah,
idea.
it's a Ponzi scheme. But the problem is nowadays the longevity of the people we at the top of those pyramids is so large
Yeah.
that it means that when they die, they have 3 or 4 layers below him that have already written a lot of papers that are already being quoted, and there's no renovation. Since we have in the institutions of research, they're not researching anything, they're just writing papers quoting each other. Several layers of people agreeing with each other. One funeral is not enough to kill the thing, because the guy below him has written in his life several papers quoting the top guy, and has below him dozens of people quoting the same guy. This happens in all sciences and in stuff that we know for sure to be real. Okay,
Right.
let's just take a few examples. The food pyramid. Okay,
The food
the
pyramid,
food pyramid was a fraud made in the 50s. This is totally documented. It's totally clear.
This is a great example.
It's terrible to feed yourself with sugar and not eat enough protein. It's terrible. But the food pyramid is being taught for
Still.
100 years now, almost 70 or 80. Okay. This year, the American government changed the food pyramid. It has been known to be a failure and a fraud for 50 years.
It's 2026. I took a personal training. I'm a certified personal trainer. At least I was. I think it's lapsed since I've injured my back, but that's besides the point. In there was a nutritional component that they literally taught the food pyramid, which I knew to be bullshit. And I was just going through the training going, why is this in here?
Exactly.
That's a great example.
This is not something like when we talk about physics, astrophysics, cosmology. That's really complicated stuff. You can get bogged down in the details. But the food pyramid, it's made for 5-year-olds, and everyone understands it's wrong. Everyone knows it's wrong. Question, Dave, why were you being taught that? Why?
Because it's standardized. And they have to have all these standardized boxes to check in which to like certify me. And that standard came from something that is 50 years old and is not, we've known to be bullshit for at least a couple of decades. But yeah, it was because it's part of the standardization of the discipline.
So that's exactly the problem we have. The guy that invented the fraud is dead for a long time. Still, his fraud exists, and the people that are repeating it, everyone knows it's a fraud. Everyone, but they keep doing it, and this happens in all institutions, all education. And now let's put it backwards, which is, if the food pyramid is this type of evident facts that a 10-year-old can understand. Sugar is bad, beef is good, but
don't eat sugar first thing in the morning.
Yes. Let's imagine how really complicated stuff, as in physics, works.
Right. Or architecture, or
so it's really complicated, and no one can go and say, hey, that's bullshit, because it's really complicated. But they know it's bullshit. They keep on pushing. And all the academics today, everyone that has a teaching position, a job in a university, they are in on a scam. They are compelled to. They cannot go against. There's the routine. They are all pushing the food pyramid again and again and again and again and again.
I'm in on the scam. That's hilarious. Yeah. I think that's a great example. And then when you bring that full circle back to archaeology and how we go ahead and try to explain this stuff, we end up where we're at, which is here in 2026. I think universally outside of the academic realm and within the academic realm as well, just under cloak of shadow, you know, it's pretty universally understood that we don't have the full picture of how these things were built, why, who built them, when, or anything like that, which is wild. I mean, when I say universally, I mean to people who think about it, right? Like, because if you ask, like, you know, my wife's sister, she just because she doesn't care, it's not an interest of hers. She'll have the mainstream narrative in her head, and that's good. So there's those people aside, and anyone who spends any time looking into this or thinking about this at all knows that, and it's very fascinating. That food pyramid thing is perfect because it goes to show you that over the course of even 100 years, we can't let go of a bullshit idea. That's crazy.
Yeah. And it's
even today.
Okay, I understand that people could not care less. My wife doesn't care about Cyclopean
Yeah, mine
walls.
doesn't either. Yeah.
So that's fine. Okay. I can explain to her the whole problem of academia and archaeology and how history is being misrepresented, and she couldn't care less. Fine. But the food pyramid affects our health and our kids' health.
It does.
And it's like, okay, they can be wrong about a lot of stuff. They, meaning the mainstream, can be wrong about a lot of stuff. And most of the times is non-consequential. So if some guy writes a paper saying that the wall in Alatri was made by the Romans and it was not made by the Romans, whatever, doesn't really change a lot.
Right.
But it does.
If you go to a family and say, have sugar for breakfast, it does change a lot.
Put sugar on top of your sugar too. That's what I used to do when I was a kid. You have the sugar cereal, and then you put a scoop of sugar on top.
Sprinkle a little bit on top of the Cheerios.
Yes, and it was fat-free.
Yeah,
it's an excellent point.
That's another one, fat-free.
But I'm going to disagree with both of your wives real quickly. Don't tell them, though, unless, you know, I don't want to flip-flop being thrown at y'all on my stead. But I think, man, what you're talking about with the food pyramid is a great raid to bring it home for us all, right? But I think just as important, the reason why they're able to feed us this BS full pyramid goes back to precisely what you're talking about, right? I think you're hinting on diffusionism, but not directed. You know, diffusionism is still people talking, right? And I think the reason that these academics trigger so hard on this diffusion, and people do in general, is because what that leads to, Henrique, when you think it through, right, is the idea that they were like us. Right? They were like us. They weren't somehow less advanced, less unable to get around, less unable to talk to each other. You don't have to say directed diffusion to believe that they were still diffusing ideas. Well, as soon as I take that on board, just like when I take on that sugar first thing in the morning, I have now swallowed a lie that lets me believe, and those elites have me believe, that this is the best we've ever been. This is the most we've ever had figured out, right? So then I can look at that bullshit food pyramid and go, well, the ones who have it figured out said this is good, so I take it. But when I get back to the heart of the matter and start chasing history, like, you know, your wives aren't willing to listen to, I can see the crux of the lie they want me to swallow. I can see that we've been more. We've been at least like this. This whole lie that 2,000 years and we've got it figured out is just that. A lie. And that's why, Henrique, I say personally, our best future requires the truth of our past. Because once we understand this stuff, we can stop falling for all of these food pyramidal lies.
Yeah, I agree. But I will say that when it comes to our wives or people like them, these just humans just exist on this huge spectrum, and it's in all categories. And one of them is, what is it that their interests are? What do they occupy their mind with? And just some people, like Henrique said, you could tell them how incredible this is. And like my wife, like way back, I stopped talking to her about this like after about a year or two of us being together. But in the beginning, I was telling her all about it, and she was more just interested in how interested I was in it, right? But after that, she doesn't really care. It doesn't make or break anything to her specifically, and I think that's just sort of like a collective human nature thing, where like we exist on this spectrum of height and intellect and interests and everything in between, and so it's one of those things. But it does.
One
The
more
truth
big
is
question
important.
that I really don't know the answer, which is the following. We are the nutcases that say, you see the food pyramid, archaeology, cosmology, economics, it's all a scam. Okay?
Yeah. It's funny how it's a pyramid too. The food pyramid.
And most people that I talk to, like normies, I go to them and say, you know, the food pyramid is a scam, right? And they say, yeah, that's a scam. And you know, the food pyramid is bad for your health. You should not take that. Yes. Okay. Now imagine they are doing it the same with other stuff. No. It's scary for them to extrapolate. And I don't know how
it's scary,
how to move on from here except preaching to the choir.
Right.
We can talk to each other, and I'm into aliens, you're not, or vice versa. Doesn't matter. We have an instant understanding that the authority is feeding us bullshit, and we have to figure out the truth by ourselves. Doesn't matter what we do believe, that we hold for certain. But if we go to outside of this little circuit of crazy people that we hang out with, we hit a wall as soon as we say maybe the problem with the food pyramid is larger and it involves other things. So we had the example of the vaccination just
it's scary
5 years ago. Yeah. So the same people that did the food pyramid and the AZT AIDS case and all the stuff they did with the vaccine.
Yeah, and it was scary to
this
people.
Conversation.
No, and it was scary to people like normies versus us crazy people to even consider that there was ulterior motives and there was something else behind just, hey, we want you all to be healthy. And I think that's where the block comes in, is that if you let go of the structure that you believe to be like, you know, have your best interests in mind, then you really do have to like come to terms with a whole new reality of everything. And that's why like people like us and in this community can talk about all these different subjects and not bat an eye. Whereas like you bring it up to a normie and you say, hey, maybe you shouldn't get that vaccine. Just maybe you should wait a little bit and see what happens. And here's why. It's like it bursts their bubble of perception of their reality, you know. So I think it's all tied together with our psychology. So we've done like a little anthropology today, a little psychology today. I like it. I want to take a look at some stuff. The first one, I might as well, your video that's coming out tomorrow, which will be like 2 weeks ago for whoever watches this. You showed me this before. Jason, I don't think has seen this. Maybe he has when we were getting ready, but you showed me this when we were getting ready, and I was like, what the fuck? I've never seen this thing before. How is it that I've never seen this thing before? And we don't even really know how to say it, but it's the Delkimur Aqueduct in Turkey. So yeah, how do you not preach to the choir? We took a little break there. But I was while I was taking my little break, I was thinking to myself, like, because you really want, I really want everyone to like understand like the importance of this, but maybe it's just only important to a certain amount of us, right? I mean, there are people out there, aliens could land on the front lawn of the White House tomorrow, and for the most part, they'd go about their day.
And it's sad because some of those things are really important, you know.
Yeah.
We are shutting down or shutting down nuclear plants that could provide us with cheaper electricity bills, that could provide us with better living, and we are doing it for god knows reason why, and we are living worse lives because of why, I don't know. The same that we are poisoning ourselves every day with awful things that we should not be eating, but we continue to eat that. Or most people would be covering themselves with sunscreen and inviting cancer.
Right.
Yeah. So just the other day, while I live in Portugal,
Sunscreen one kills
so
me.
yeah,
I know. I was at the beach
I live in Portugal,
yesterday.
so the
People
beach is a
spraying it
really
on
big
them, and I'm
thing.
like, "Get the poison off of me! Why are you spraying poison on
Yeah.
me?"
So after going through this whole journey of discovery, I realized that, oh, maybe sunscreen is not good. Let me study it a bit. It's not. And then I go to the beach with a lot of friends and people, and they say, oh, have you got sunscreen? And I said, I never use it. They're like,
No,
oh,
I haven't used it in
what?
10 years.
Yeah. So like big Bambi eyes looking at me. How can you not use sunscreen? That's so when it's too hot, I go to the shadow.
And also the sun's good for you.
Exactly.
Especially if you dose it properly, you know what I mean? Like, 'cause you just don't, how about
Mhm.
just don't let yourself burn, right? You can tell
Exactly.
just by paying attention. But
Exactly.
instead,
And if you
it's
have
like
the
every
sunscreen, you're
hour.
not paying attention. You're just like doing the two things wrong. So
Yeah.
it's really a problem that I don't know how to communicate. And it would be wonderful if someone more talented could find a way. I can't. Not even in my closest friends and family, I cannot express this idea that we should be suspicious about the corporate, greedy slash academic big tech interests. They are not caring for us. They're caring for their jobs.
I just figured it out. All right. I got it. All right. So these people are very susceptible to propaganda and narratives, right? So if a bunch of good people took control of the world with good intentions, we could just package it as propaganda and narrative, right? And then they'd start going for it. No
I'm all for
sunscreen, no
it.
sugar in the morning.
I'm all for it.
Ancient history
As
is
long as I'm in charge.
interesting. Yeah, exactly. As long as we decide who are the good people,
Yes.
whose intentions are pure. You know what? We'll just let AI do it. How about that?
Yeah. I do have the hope it helps.
It might.
It's just hope.
I've been going deep on my own on AI. It put me in a dark place over the weekend, but I was contemplating all the different ways that AI could save us from ourselves, but also all the ways it could go like go the wrong
Way
way.
higher. Yeah.
And I actually think that I think it could, with some rough patches, end up being the solution. But it has to be smarter than us. But anyway, I really did want I really did want to man, they don't even know how AI works, like, to be honest.
Exactly.
They don't even know how it self-learns. But anyway, that's besides the point. Um, I want to show some of like Henrique's work because it's really good. And this is from Turkey. When did you first learn about this site? And why did you decide to make a video about it? And then tell us a little bit about it as it plays.
Okay, so I know of it for the beginning of the channel, which is like 2 3 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I've seen some pictures and I found it very interesting. It has a bottom made with polygonal masonry and the top made with stone pipes. The stone pipes are really awesome, and that was what grabbed my attention. Reading about it, it's a Roman construction, the stone pipes, and they did the stone pipes like this in a second location, which is in the south of Spain, Cadiz. These are the stone pipes, Roman made, really awesome technology. They use it to push water up the hill, because to push the water up the hill, you have the pipes need to withstand a lot of pressure. And to resist this pressure, they need to be really strong. And after the Romans stopped doing these pressurized water pipes, it took over 1,000 years for the first person to do it again. So the first time it was done after the Romans was in the 1500s, and it was not at the scale. And only recently these things show up in India and China. No one else is doing it. So this is really an awesome development. However, underneath the pipes, we have Roman construction work, which is made with rubble and cement. And underneath that, we have the Cyclopean or the polygonal walls, as in made with the odd-shaped stones. So we have three layers: the layer of the polygonal walls, the layer of the Roman work with the mortar and the rubble stones, and the pipes. What I find interesting is that there was a previous aqueduct done on the exact same place several centuries before the Romans. This is perfectly established because in other places of the path, one can see the original work. And the original work is there. There was a pipeline going through the same path that the Romans reused. But that original pipeline was crossing this exact same spot, meaning the original builders were pushing water up, which is quite the feat, quite the achievement. And if the original builders were doing the water pushing up, it means the technology is not Roman. It predates them. It's an older invention. And that's why I think it's super, super interesting. And last June, I was lucky enough to travel to Turkey.
Okay.
So I left my family in alone for a while because no one wants to come with me. And I rushed to go and see this place and other places like it, which is a pity because not only the construction is amazing, the site is really, really beautiful. This is in a region called the Turkish Riviera, which is a really beautiful spot nature-wise and very touristical and has a lot of interesting ruins. However, when we get to this site, there's no one there. I was there alone for, I don't know,
You were alone?
1
There's
hour
no
or
one
so.
there?
No one there.
What?
That's
No
one visits this thing. I was alone there. I drove there. This is not even a hard place to reach. You just go there, drive, park the car, walk 100 meters or so, and you're there. No one visits it.
That's mind-blowing. Had you heard of this, Jason, this site?
No, I haven't. And I'm finding all kinds of cool things in there, none to take up time with, but just so much that draws my eye. I do find it, like you, just so curious how non-curious people are about these things.
Would you consider that Cyclopean?
No, it
No,
is for
right?
sure. Okay, let me be correct. I don't think it was built by the same culture that built the stuff in Sardinia or the Balearic Islands or even in Greece. I
Mm-hmm.
think they are remnants of people that were living in this region, and they kept on using some of the traditions. Why don't I think it is Cyclopean? It's because, pretty as it is, the size of the stones are not so large, and the fitting is not so perfect. So
Right.
it looks like something that a person would do knowing of, and it's late stage polygonal construction and not properly the cultural movement that started the trend. The
Sure.
vast majority of the better looking Cyclopean works we have in Europe are this second case, which is people decided to build in this way after realizing it existed and it could be done.
Mm.
So they usually do with smallish stones. They usually do it with fitting smaller stones in the middle. The tighting is not so perfect. Visually, they look nice. They look dissimilar, but they are like the decline of the idea. The Romans were never have never done it. So whenever we see a polygonal work being said to be Roman, we have to be very suspicious because Romans were running an empire. They could not afford to lose time on these aesthetic choices. So they don't do it. There's no polygonal walls in Rome. So if they were willing to do all crazy stuff, they would do it on Rome. And they did not do anything like that in Rome. All the walls that are said to be have done by the Romans, there's nothing about it saying that is done by the Romans, and they're always dated to the first time the Romans arrived. So if the Romans arrived in a place in Italy in the 5th century, they say this was done by the Romans in the 5th century. Because after that, we have a lot of stuff the Romans left beforehand. So this was done at exactly that interval when the Romans arrived. At least it means that the Romans stopped it.
That seems like a common issue, or however you want to call it. Dating by the dating by the Romans, right?
Exactly.
You could say the same thing about the dynastic Egyptians.
Egyptian, or you can say the same thing about the Portuguese. That goes back to the walls in India,
Mm-hmm.
and Japan. That's what the walls in India and Japan have in common. Um,
Interesting. That's actually a good
the,
segue
the thing
into.
is that,
Go ahead.
yeah, the way it's the Indians walls are described is that they were all built in the 1500s, and the reason why is that the it was when the Portuguese first arrived. When they first arrive into a place, what we have is the writings of the Portuguese saying, look, this guy doing this and that, and this is the king of this place, and this place was built for that person. So we have the first writings of documenting a place. This happens in India, happens in Japan, because the polygonal walls in Japan, they also are also dated to about the time the Portuguese interfered in Japan. And in South America, we also have the same effect, not with the Portuguese, but with the Spanish. As in, the Spanish go there and suddenly there's no more. There's no more polygonal walls. Why? They changed the environment, the society, the structure of the place. The impact of this arrival was so large, the culture changed,
Huh.
and they stopped doing those things. That's one obvious explanation that happened everywhere with the Romans, with the Portuguese, with the Spanish. The second explanation is
Spanish
that,
did it in America, no doubt, bro.
yeah, the second explanation is that these things were on the way out for a long time. Maybe they are much older, but the locals were not talking about it. They were just saying, there it is. And when the first Europeans arrival, they say, okay, this was here the day I arrived. So this was made by the person that I just visited. This is what happens in South America because the Inca did not write anything. All we have are the accounts of the Spanish. And what the Spanish say is, look, those things are no more. The same can be said about Europe when the Romans arrived, because all the people that the Romans come to conquer and had polygonal walls, they did not write. There was no writing in Europe before the Romans for most of Europe. So the Greeks, they had it, but the Europeans, the other Europeans had no writing. So the first ever thing written about them is the Romans saying, oh, this was here and this is no longer here. So the date is pushed back and to the back of the Romans, or pushed back to the back of the Spaniards' arrival in South America, instead of just saying, well, it's older, but we don't know how much older.
Wow.
So,
When I was looking at some of those big stones they were using, it's very familiar looking stuff. Like looks a lot like Turkey, for example.
yeah.
But and they were polygonal to a degree, right?
In India, you mean?
Yeah, what we were just looking at.
Yeah. So in India, let's look at them again and push the video a bit back.
Yeah, please.
In India, I do not think they are related to Europe, because when you look closer to the stones, you can see metal tools marks. And also, many of those walls, they make up these complex structures that were made in the 1500s or the 1400s at most. What the video explores is that these are not the oldest stoneworks in India. There are polygonal walls in India that are much older than these. And the original oldest polygonal walls in India are the inspiration for this later revamp of the technology. So this one that we are seeing now is, well, the names are impronounceable, but I think it's Maliabad.
Right.
This was,
that's what we'll
it's
call
very
it.
polygonal. It's very polygonal, but if you look closely, you see the cut marks.
Right. Yeah, you do.
It was made with metal tools. It's not polished, as in most of Europe and most of South America, that has no metal tools. So what I think is that, and that's the theory of the video about, which is the following. At about the 1500s, starting around 1300s, there was this new empire occupying the south of India. That's the Vijayanagara Empire. They conquered a big chunk of the land, and they were fighting the northern rulers, which were Muslims. So the southern Hindu rulers, they decided to do a revival of something, and they decided to build stuff that looks to them as being quintessential Hindu or quintessential historical. So they made this all revision of construction styles and recovered the style of polygonal work that exists in odd places, and I don't know why.
Yeah, there's not a great explanation, huh?
Yeah. So here in the beginning, we can see this is the granaries. That's
Mm-hmm.
that the bottom part is from before that empire, and it's polygonal. So half a millennium they were starting with this type of work.
Yeah, because the bottom part of it is different stone. It's polygonal, and on top it's not, right?
It's not, but the top one was made in the 8th century 700s, half a millennium before all the others we were seeing.
Right.
So what I think is that the builders of all the other forts were inspired by this construction and others like it that are much older and said, you know what? This is a cool Hindu style, which doesn't matter if it is or not, but that's what they thought. And let's build our crazy temples and our crazy palaces in a place called Hampi, which is absolutely marvelous. Um, and let's do it as the old Indo would do. Let's do it that way.
Hmm.
So, but there's a whole video to show off. I think the best way is for people to go and check the video, and they might get some of the jokes that I
Yeah,
try to put in there.
and just get to look at all these amazing sites. I rewound this one like 3 or 4 times at different parts because I'd never seen this shit before. A lot of the stuff you see in India that people cover are some of the more complex stuff. You know, like
Yeah, there's really,
Kailasa
really
Temple or
elaborated temples. Yes, Ellora
Yeah,
and
the
stuff
ones
like
that
that,
look
which is like,
carved out of bedrock, all
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
which they're awesome. They're really
Sure.
awesome, but fine.
You're a Cyclopean wall guy.
Yeah.
You mentioned in India, and I think as well as in Japan, that the stonework, even the most elaborate stuff in Japan, is really interesting and whatnot. But it's explainable, right? It's not one of the ones like Machu Picchu that's like totally
Yes.
unexplainable, but still very magnificent stuff. Michael Collins, Wandering Wolf, he tried to come on my show a few days ago, but his camera wasn't working. He was going to show me a bunch of stuff from there. But I watched your video on it this morning. Did you want to transition to that Japan and talk to us about your theory on this video, the unknown story of ancient stone wonders in Japan, and what they were trying to do?
Yeah, so it's really strange because we have a super large gap on the calendar. Very much like India. We have the later work, which is made by this guy in the central of Japan, as a Japanese name I cannot repeat. This guy builds some really beautiful Cyclopean walls of a polygonal type, and he is known for a special type of construction, which is the turtle shell. I was trying to push it back. And very precise, very well done, with the small stones very well fitted together. 100 years before, they were doing this big stuff in the castles. The shogun and the samurais were doing this big stuff with big blocks, but those are only for show. The samurai castles have sort of polygonal work, but they are all facades. They have no depth. And they were made with the intention of show off, of impress. Before that, we have like a blank 500 years of nothingness in Japan. No one was building anything. No one was doing anything. And the only place where people were doing whatever interesting stone work was in Okinawa. In the 1200s, Okinawans were doing polygonal works. And before all that, at the beginning of our era, the Japanese went to the crazy period of building awkward sculptures of stone and bizarre shapes. Why they this whole story doesn't fit. This is the official story. I was just explaining how it goes in the video. I don't have a good theory for it. I really don't have. I just noticed that the Japanese go from doing dolmens in the beginning of our era, stop using stone for a while, go back to polygonal masonry, excel at polygonal masonry in a very particular type, and then quit it.
It has to be some sort of cultural exchange, right? That we just undocumented. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my guess. My guess is that at a point in time, someone came about with the idea and it flew. It went back into fashion, let's say.
And then went out of fashion again.
I do have, because the way it goes out of fashion is very well documented, because it's already near the Meiji Restoration at the end of the Edo period, which is like 1700s. The out of fashion period is very well documented. And what happens is the Japanese society goes through an acceleration. And with this acceleration, the old ways make no sense. It starts making no sense for them to build these elaborate castles and these elaborate structures, because they want to move faster and they want to be practical. That is the core idea of the Meiji Restoration, and that is the reason why they stopped making the samurai castles. Which again comes at a good parallel with all the other Cyclopean places, which is, it's easy to understand why they stopped doing it. Okay, it's cumbersome, it's expensive, it's difficult. The benefit is not clear. So it's easy to say societies would go to a time and say, yeah, I had enough, I don't want it anymore. What is very hard to explain is why they decided to do it. And so far, the only proper explanation I could find for the way they start doing it is that they got inspiration from somewhere else. Someone went on to them and said, look, this is really cool, and you'll be remembered forever. And they start doing it. Because the key aspect of polygonal walls is, let's just stop the thing there. The key aspect of polygonal walls is that they last for a really long time.
Right.
They survive a really long time. So to build those things, it has to have a perspective of millennia ahead. So the people deciding to do it, they have to be in this frame of mind of, let's do something that is complicated, it's difficult, but it will be here 1,000 years from now. We have totally lost that capacity.
Does that hint at a longer history than us, Henrique? You know, if they're thinking that far ahead, do you think that means that's because they remembered that far behind?
Well, that's one very good possibility. Another very good possibility was that there was a massive collapse in their society, and they think, oh, come on, we better be careful this time.
That's yours is probably better than mine. You're right. Yep.
Yeah, there's just like pride being involved, saying, look, we can do this. We are the ones that are going to build stuff for the millennia. Whatever it's totally past us. Our society today we cannot think more than 2 years. We've
That you're giving
planned
too much credit.
obsolescence.
Too much credit.
Yeah.
I don't.
More
So
than
I,
we've
two days, isn't
lost
it,
that.
Dave?
so the news
Yeah.
cycle like goes. You throw something in there and it
Mhm.
washes out in 3 days.
Exactly. So we've lost that capacity as so catastrophically that we cannot even relate properly to what was going on with the minds of the builders that decided to build this stuff. The many other builders, like all the megalithic stuff, all the pyramids, everything like that, they all shared this, even the Gobekli Tepe, whatever, they all share this idea, which is I'm going to do something that is going to be here forever. This happens like with Native Americans when they
Yep.
do the earth mounds. They
Mhm.
decide, okay, I'm going to do something, and my grand times 100 will look at this and say, "Wow,
Yes. Yes.
uh,
And where does that
we've
come
lost it."
from? Does that mean you've named cultures that span the world, right? And having this idea of constructing things that land through time. And if we
Mhm,
take your idea of there being a culture that had perhaps experienced a devastation, therefore they were thinking we need to last through time, I think we're getting to a kernel of some sort of diffusion, an idea, not necessarily like these same techniques, the stone walls, because there can be a stone
mhm,
wall, there can be an earth mound, there can be a dolmen, right? But the
mhm,
idea that you build something that will last down through time could be the idea that I'm calling diffused, right? If this
mhm.
one society that was knocked out then went around, and in each cultural expression, that idea was able to express itself that
Yeah.
no, you need to be doing things that will last water
Mhm.
and whatever catastrophe that could come.
Yeah.
It's very interesting
You know,
thread there, Enrique.
in our alternative world, there's the guys that are the Tartaria fans.
Mhm.
You may have seen them. The
You could
Tartaria
go into
fans, I
that.
think they're funny. I love seeing their posts because what they do is that they take these late 1700s, early 1800s buildings, very beautiful stuff, and they say, "Look, this is a lost civilization,"
It's
uh,
fun.
which is cool. But the thing is, it is a lost civilization in the sense that no one is building that stuff anymore.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you
Right.
you you go to New York and you have the Chrysler Building,
It's
amazingly
incredible.
beautiful building. It's incredible. And now you have the World Trade Center one or the whatever new tallest building in. It's an ugly block.
Right.
Right.
We've lost the mind of Tartaria. You know.
Do you think that's sort of a natural progression? Like it seems to happen a lot. It, we build like these incredible things that last a really long time, and then we regress, and then maybe we do it again, and then we regress, and maybe it takes a catastrophe or something in order for us to do that.
Society's values
I was
shift,
talking.
right? That's back to where Enrique was
Yeah.
talking about in the beginning, the cultures represented. If we look at the
Yes.
architecture and we start to see our society shifting, which way does it tend to be
Its
going?
value.
It's going down, right? And so then what happens in my construction? It seems, and then man, here we are a couple of generations later getting shown pictures of what my great great grandfather did, and it's so different. There's a whole world of people that can go, man, this is a lost civilization. They're lying to us. Look at this. But that was just stuff our grandfathers built. It's wild.
Mhm.
That is
Yeah, and they
wild.
build it to really look nice. There's another
Yes.
video that I like to watch is the another thing that I just like to watch, which is people going to slums and making AI videos of how it could be nice one day from it could be nice. All it takes is for people to collect the garbage and have a bit of pride on themselves. And but somehow it doesn't go that way. So going full circle about the question that Dave made, if I visit the places, one of the places that I was so happy to be able to visit before doing the video was Japan. Japan looks like another planet because in a
Culturally
lot,
and everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible. But what is most striking being there is that there's no garbage on the streets and there's no noise. They are
Which is
all
also
so
pollution, by the way. Physical pollution, but there's also noise pollution, right? It's a thing.
Mhm. Yeah, but they are so clean, polite, elegant that you don't see any
Organized.
trash and you don't see any noise. People are just, you have that crossing Shibuya or whatever, thousands of people rushing and it's silence.
People get in
And
lines. They line up.
people get in lines. So
Yeah.
what do they have? They have this sense of belonging, of sharing,
Yeah.
and that we don't have in our society.
Hmm.
What we do have is a lot of opportunistic people in middle management positions trying to push away the food pyramid because they get a government grant because of that. That's what we have.
Yeah. And then they still build modern buildings that are really nice too in Japan, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they it's not saying that they're like the perfect society, whatever. They
No.
have tons of problems like everywhere else. It's just that it's impressive how they have I don't know the word for in English, but they're proud of being doing the right thing.
Patriotism. I
It
don't
is
know
a
if
very
that's
different cultural expression. I mean, really are. I used to get into bonsai, the tree in
Mhm.
pot. And one of the things that most drew me to it was once you start getting into the philosophy would be a word for it, behind it, and the thought processes. And those really lead you into this culture that has, the idea of what is it, the broken pot. They always paint the break
Mhm.
with gold, right? And the way they arrange flowers, and it's so precise and perfect, and that carries through that whole culture, right? I don't have a word for it. I just know that when I dip my toe in it with bonsai, my sort of spirit was like, man, I really enjoy this way of looking at the world that they have there.
Mhm. And they're in a way they are also losing it, or it's in decline for them as well.
See,
And we are, as a
Hmm.
whole, in this global society with a huge problem of selfish, immediate,
see,
opportunistic behavior. And that
amen.
is way, way, way more prevalent in the people that have government jobs.
See,
Yeah,
Right.
which includes
Yeah, it's
the
true.
academics.
It, if you went to Okinawa today, you could like look one direction and see like the beautiful culture and distinct culture and the old culture, and then you could turn around. I've seen videos of this, and there's a McDonald's in a shopping mall there.
right.
So it is invading. One of the my biggest takeaways of today's talk was the idea that culture is expressed through architecture, and it's not like when you're talking about culture. If you talk to a cultural anthropologist, they don't consider architecture as much. I forget the two things that you said that they consider culture: language and something else.
And no, I consider language, religion, and architecture, which
Uh-huh.
is things that involve a whole society to be in agreement.
Yeah,
They
right.
consider pottery
And
and
weapons. Yeah.
weapons.
Right. Yeah. But architecture is obviously an expression of culture. I talked to a guy yesterday. He's a he talked to me about logical fallacies within the Orion correlation theory, which you know there are plenty. It bums me out a little bit, but at the same
Mhm.
time, he was really stuck on the idea that in order to build these mega structures, you need to have a massive practical return of investment. So like he thinks the pyramid, the Great Pyramid specifically, was a water pump, whatever. Not whatever to him. I just mean like that's not besides the point.
Yeah. I understand.
The structure itself, the reason why it's so impressive is because it had this massive return of investment through energy creation, through the water pump system and irrigation and yada yada yada. And I was trying to share with him that I thought maybe you know, you could have a massive spiritual return of investment in a
Right.
structure as well, but he didn't bite on that because he was certain that it had to be a practical thing. But then I was wondering, I wanted to ask you guys, is it a practical return of investment to say be Native American mound builders or whoever built Machu Picchu or whatever to have these things last forever? Is there a practical return of investment to the difficulty it would have taken the culture to organize and do that? Is time a return of investment on there?
It should be. And we have in Europe, we have cathedrals to show how it goes. Okay. So the society collapsed after the Romans. There was some tough times, and there was a new organization, and this new organization was around villages or small merchant towns, and these merchant towns decide to organize themselves and build cathedrals.
Yeah.
And the cathedrals were built just for the glory of God and for the show off of ability of the locals. These cities, they did not have a ruler. They were not part of an empire. They were independent, self-governed cities. And these buildings were built with collections from the people, donations. Not all. As soon as the fashion became a thing, all the rulers would decide to build a cathedral because the other cities have. But the trend started with donations from the people to build something in honor of God and their faith, which is the same thing as a pyramid. They are absurdly beautiful, monumental stone works that were built just to show off.
Dave, I think the time investment might become worth it if, first of all, you mentioned the pyramids and you mentioned people who believe they are some sort of physical plant or machine, right? Well, if we go back to another, we mentioned Graham Hancock, and an idea he's popular with positing and that I lean towards is that whatever this culture was, it was not coming at this world from the way we are, from this materialistic mindset, right? So if I say this pyramid was indeed some sort of consciousness elevation, that might be a rudimentary word we would use, right? For this thing they had and these realities about this reality that they leaned into that we haven't, right? Then, I think I can see the time expenditure being worth it, right? The second thing, Dave, about it lasting through time, I think the only thing that can make that time investment of the builders make sense is if, as Enrique had pointed out, they had experienced, they had reached some pinnacle and then had experienced a total wipeout, right? Now, then there
Or at
would
least
be
had a record of
people
it.
who knew what that meant, right? They knew that, okay, our shit's gone. What's left is basically like their babies again. So we'll do our best to try to help them not be babies. We'll pass on some basic rudimentary shit about how to get on here. But then what we will do is we will leave a clue. We will leave something that way the hell down the line, when they reach a point kind of close to where we were, they will then see something and hopefully maybe like correct, like
Yeah.
start understanding there was something different from us. So then you're talking about people who really experienced a destruction and are thinking ahead for humanity. That's probably the only way in two ways I get to wrap my head around how was it worth their time, because we're not
Mhm.
looking for us. We're looking for some people that were seeing this place slightly differently.
The guy I
Yeah.
talked to.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
And I don't think that this was done in one lifetime.
Mm,
Right.
I think that cycle of understanding can take several lifetimes and be communicated
Yes.
more or less informally. And again, the example of the European cathedrals. The
Yes.
Romans had the empire. They made incredible stuff. It crumbles. Europe goes into a period of 200, 300, doesn't matter how many centuries, that they cannot do anything proper.
Right.
They are constantly fighting one another. There's the roads break down. There's no markets. There's no trade, nothing.
And then they
And
throw
then
up
suddenly,
cathedrals that make no sense.
then things start to get sense of it with the feudal systems established. When the
Yes.
feudal system established, the infighting stops because there's no gain on conquering the other guy land, because both of the lords have lands and they know it's way more expensive to fight another lord. So when there's a very large pacification in the period called the High Middle
Right.
Ages, and in that transition, cities they start to build cathedrals, as if remembering that okay, we need to take care of what's important.
Right.
We need to build something for the ages. We need to put in the center of our town a building that is seen by everybody all the time. Unfortunately, it's not, because all the cathedrals now are swamped.
right. So we're gonna start wrapping up because Jason's got to
Yep.
go. If
Yes.
you wouldn't
Sorry.
mind, Enrique, it's good. Would you pull up that Google Earth thing quick that we talked about? I just wanted to show this to the
Yeah.
audience to give them like a context of like what you're doing and how many like potential sites we're dealing with. And while you're pulling that up, at the beginning, I called you a categorizer of Cyclopean sites. I think that those are the words I used. A collector and categorizer? I think that's what I said. Would you say that's true?
I've made a list of 1,000 sites around the world
1,000?
that are divided more or 1,000, more or less. 500 of them are Cyclopean. 500 of them, I have no idea what they are, and I'm looking at them, trying to understand. So I cannot show in the map here the which one is which, because Google Maps shows them in the same
Right.
colors. So what you have here are the ones that are Cyclopean and the ones that are not Cyclopean, but I'm curious about them. Also, what I do have is a handmade map of where the Cyclopean walls are to be found. And this is it.
Wow.
You have Japan, you have India, you have Europe, you have South America, and Easter Island. I don't know if you can see that.
That is a wild image.
Okay.
There has to be some.
So this is where they're found.
There has to be some connection here, like obviously, like
Yeah.
of how it traveled. But this is really cool.
Yeah. So for instance, here you have the red line with the Inca Empire, and in orange you have the areas with polygonal walls.
A little bit frozen.
They don't
He's
fit,
frozen.
which is kind of surprising. Um, and here in Europe, you have another thing, which is you have all these areas with the polygonal walls, which are the orange dots, all of them to the south of the continent, nothing to the north. If something was as regular experience as we are supposed to believe, then they would be everywhere, and not only in these places, but they are only in these places because that's what the culture means. The people living here believe in doing it. The people living just out there, they don't believe in doing it.
This is really interesting. Especially, I'm glad you made this map because it's quite striking, because it's only in, like, you're talking about 1,000 sites only in these spots. And
Yeah.
we know, like, humans for the most part live and
Everywhere.
have lived everywhere.
But only in these places the fashion ever took hold.
The fashion, yeah,
Yeah.
for whatever way you want to put it. Jason?
Great map. Yeah, I see crossings, I see, of course, everything centered around the Mediterranean. Again, I'm
Right.
thinking water as a way for diffusion. And then Peru to Easter Island. Every time I think of Peru and Easter Island, I think of that giant trident that's on the side of the hill over there in, like, Argentina or Peru, wherever it is. When you cross over from Easter Island, you see it from the ocean. And then to the other side of the map, you've got Japan and everything right there. So I could easily connect these splotches by sea travel and see how they focused
Mhm.
around what may have been major corridors, both between continents, stopping on the island, and then there all
Mhm.
around the Mediterranean. It's great
Yeah.
work, Enrique. I'll,
What do you
I'll
do with
wrap up
Peru,
with,
though?
yeah, Peru's
Yeah, so
crazy.
yeah, Peru is crazy, totally crazy. I don't think Peru is. I think Peru influenced Easter Island
Yeah,
because they're close by and it's just a small wall and people travel back and forth and got the idea.
yeah,
I suspect the whole Pacific Rim had contact, but it was very scarce contact.
see,
And the Europeans around the Mediterranean, obviously, if it's like a pond, they would go back and forth all day, and they've
right,
been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years, crossing into the islands back and forth. So they are very united along that area. And if one goes to the Atlantic Ocean out of the coast of Morocco, and you got stranded at sea, the next place you stop is in Mexico.
see, yeah,
So I think that the Mexican culture got these ideas, the Quetzalcoatl myth of people arriving by boat with ideas, it's real because
yeah,
that would be the most common thing for happen, which is a guy is running around trading whatever in the Atlantic European coast. He got a bad day at sea. He's pushed down by the current. He can survive the 3 4 months the trip lasts because it's really most of the times they will arrive dead, but they could. And when they go there, the place they landed is in Mexico. There's a big current going into the Gulf of
yes,
Mexico that crosses all the Caribbean
Gulf
islands, and then
Stream,
you
yeah,
land on the Mexican shore. Yeah. The thing, it's one of the things I said in one video, which is what the Portuguese sailors or Christopher Columbus invented was the round trip, because one-way trips been there
see,
forever.
see,
Interesting. One-eyed giant building walls. Henrique Agostinho, hailing from Portugal. Check out his YouTube channel. We'll put the link in the description. Jason, any final comments for Henrique?
Final on this is Henrique. I listen, my first interview with you, we focused on your Cyclopean walls, right? Here in this interview, I think we really started getting into some conversation and some deep dives in which all of our particular research connects us. And I very much look forward, Enrique, to maybe getting you and Ricardo together and us having a conversation that veers more heavily into these things that we obviously all understand so well. And I know the audience has enjoyed here today. Dave, I always love hanging out with you, man. I'm good to see you. Missed you on Sunday. I'm glad you're feeling better. And thank you very much, as always, for this opportunity to come together with this community and start talking about these things that we need the normies eventually talking about, as we pointed out here. So I love the opportunity. I'm going to get my kids in the car and head back to Alabama, Dave.
All right, brother. Henrique, any last words before we go?
Yeah, don't trust the food pyramid.
Don't trust the food pyramid.
That's a good spot to end it. Thanks so much,
Or the
guys.
ones who gave it to you.
Yeah, or the ones that we could do that again. Right. Good night, everyone. Light, love, truth. Talk to you soon.
Love you guys.